Dear EA, Andrew Wilson, and whomever is next in line to Andrew, who may be in charge of EA by the time this video is hopefully noticed by you. I am a lay person who has played a good portion of EA's games. In this letter, my prime objective is to help you enter the mind of a lay person. For the critical but fair nature of this letter to really work, it would hopefully be the result of me having done my best to get in the mind of not a lay person, a person like yourself, who earns tens of millions of dollars a year and whose life is drastically different from ours. This kind of lifestyle will absolutely shape the mind and world view of whomsoever is lucky enough to achieve that level of earning. This shift in mindset, as I understand it, and have demonstrably seen in other non-lay people of the world, is inevitable. As a lay person, I want to say firstly that capacity for hunger for more is present in every one of us. I want you to understand how this open letter is not charged with any kind of bias. It is a letter simply from one human being to another. There is no rank here, no hierarchy. And the first big question that I have for anyone in EA's innermost circle of top brass is, what is the end game? I mean, what is the goal? What are you ultimately working towards? Most lay people who game would simply say they're so greedy they just want more every year. Of course, the pursuit of being more successful than the year before is the simple reason the concept of business exists. However, I believe there is a threshold where this rule set ceases to be necessary. When I moved recently to somewhere that was thriving more economically, naturally, I got a new job. Technically, it was a giant pay rise, taking me to a further $7,000 a year in salary. I felt safer knowing more money was coming in to support my now enhanced quality of life. It was a comfortable feeling. That feeling of comfort in this modern age is tied to the imagery of numbers. The higher the number in our bank account, the better we feel. I suppose that is just what being alive is in this modern age, being a slave to those numbers as they affect a vast majority of our thinking and reasoning. I want to let you know what I was thinking, as that hunger for higher numbers arose in me from time to time. I was thinking of my family, those closest to me and in need. Second to that, I was thinking, of course, of myself. Just how much could I improve my life to the point where I would die with a smile, ultimately content with what I had done with my life. Perhaps I would begin a business of my own, and after that, I honestly can't see what. I wouldn't know what the next big thing to spend my money on would be after that. I'd invest in this super expensive thing that cost billions, knowing my investment was no more than a grain of sand in the desert of money in my possession. As a result, surely the thrill of expenditure would no longer be a thrill. The things it would grant would lose all personal worth to me. I don't want to get too much into philosophy about money because no doubt, despite my best efforts, each of ours will differ drastically, and maybe you don't understand the things I am implying here. Great if you do. I see EA as a company that is lost in that desert of money. Its clout as a financial tour de force has reached its terminal velocity and then gone faster. It is a company that has so much to spend on projects, but has vast amounts more that it simply doesn't know what to do with in its entirety. This money isn't money. It isn't physical. It's numbers on a screen that wait to be made physical. This is where the infamous investors come in, acting as a strong wind in the desert of money to shuffle things around a little. It would be fair to say at this point that money in EA has become meaningless, at least in such quantity. Other businesses spend 50, 60, 70 years building a brand to earn a fraction of what EA garners every year. It's only taken EA around 20 years to gain the same level. The next question I would like to ask is, was there a contingency plan for this scenario? Forgive my cynicism, but I think not. As a result of this scenario, EA is in a particularly unique position, a uniquely lonely position. No sources exist that can be deferred to that describe a company rising to such lofty heights in such a short amount of time. There is no resource to turn to for reference about what to do next. I'd like to think I've driven home, put frankly, how any one entity having this much money is pointless. It's no more fruitful than having half the quantity instead. The only way this amount of money could be put to good use in one go is by saving the planet, or privately funding Elon Musk to colonize Mars when he figures out how. Since EA is not going to assist in any of that, as I'm sure it has no interest whatsoever, it is not my insinuation to suggest EA does this as a solution. However, I do have an idea that I do so hope you will take on with an open mind. This doesn't have to be Andrew Wilson, it can be anyone in top brass at EA. Anyone with a voice on the board. My idea is technically quite simple, and I will use Anthem to help get it across. At the time of writing this letter, it is January 30th, 2019, a few weeks away from Anthem's release. As I'm sure you're aware, uproar has occurred yet again with a product you are soon to release. This is, of course, bad PR. It makes you look bad. You are aware of this, I'm sure. You also don't care, because why would any reasonable-minded human care if they had a desert of cash to warm them while they slept? I wouldn't care if I were in your position. If EA collapses, you have enough money to live off to the end of your days, so the worst case scenario is that you live out the rest of your days happy. Regardless, the bad PR goes on, and in the case of Anthem, it's once again worries about over-monetization. It's no secret that this monetization is an investor pleaser. An investor has more of a reason to get involved with a product that hopefully for them keeps on giving. No other singular product on the planet is something that can be invested in that, when successful, can keep on giving years later. It would be interesting to understand what portion of EA's estate exists because of these investors, and compare it to the portion made up of microtransaction revenue. I'm no financial expert and I'm rubbish with numbers, so perhaps they are one and the same. Returning to Anthem and my potential solution to EA's morally questionable desert of cash, a useful metaphor that turned out to be, I will say it plainly. Completely demonetize Anthem. Hopefully, I understand your mindset to running EA as a business in some small measure, so I hope I'm right when I say your first reaction to this idea will be worry for the investors. Especially now, a time where EA's stocks are plummeting, and I think the company is losing more than it has in a good few years. Yes, absolutely, EA and the investors will get a lot less money if Anthem or any other EA title is entirely demonetized. Not ideal, I know. It's basically inevitable that you will lose the vast majority of investors you currently have. Battlefront 2 was like sticking your head in a guillotine to you. Things will start looking a lot worse again, but the one thing that you need to offset all that bad news now more than ever is customer goodwill. Again, speaking as a layperson, all of the YouTube rants and angry blogs out there are not encapsulating a small portion of EA haters. They are representative of everyone. Everyone hates EA. But they love buying video games. So I suppose there's a chance of you seeing your customers as naive and hypocritical. If this is the case, then why would you respect your customer? They pay you anyway. But as famous YouTuber Angry Joe once said, your real boss is your audience. The ultimate power that decides if you come or go lies with them. When that power is in the hands of everyone, those who hate you, everyone. As a business, it is something you should be incredibly concerned with and wary about. More and more people are opting to put their foot down and boycott an EA game. No matter how awesome the trailers may be, purely for the fact that EA is the game's developer or publisher. The people, your bosses, are saying your product is not worth them spending $60 on, only to get half a game and the other half with a character skin for a further $40 or so. If my boss told me something wasn't good enough over and over for years, I'd be a nervous wreck, fearing for my job every day. So yes, if you demonetized Anthem completely, you would make a damn sight less than your financial forecasters told you, and yes, your investors would run away. But the goodwill would start to return. For it to come back, it will take doing the same thing with several other AAA titles for a few years. As you go through this process, your bosses, the people, will be more inclined to buy into what you're selling, and you'll be closer to a point where you don't need the investors anymore. As it stands, that increasing number of people choosing to boycott your games, as evidenced in the Battlefield 5 underwhelming sales, is something to worry about, as they, your bosses, should be your number one priority, because they have the power to eventually put EA into administration. And they may well do if the prime focus continues to be on pleasing investors to fund ever more ambitious projects. Those ambitious projects need to go on the back burner for a while. You've just caved to Belgium and demonetized your games there. You must have known that court hearing would end in you losing. You must see that what is happening is wrong. You must see the success for Rockstar and CD Projekt Red as a result of investing money into single-player experiences that people en masse are interested in. Now, just keep going. Don't stop at Belgium. Don't argue with any other government that sees you as a criminal. Instead, take the hit for a few years and get this goodwill back, so EA can make great games 10, 20, 30 years from now. I'm pretty sure you're good for it. Blockbuster refused to be bought by Netflix because they were blind to the future and considered streaming a fad, a gimmick. Now Blockbuster is gone. It got gone pretty quickly after turning down that deal. Don't be blind to the future like them. You know this business approach isn't sustainable indefinitely. So make the smart move now, when it hurts less than it would when it all eventually hits the fan. I hope in some small measure I've offered a unique perspective from a person as far removed from your everyday social circle it is possible to be. As a massive business, I hope that you take this letter as a vital tool in understanding the people in your gaming audience. Journalists and YouTube channels alike have only discussed so far how EA is evil and greedy, etc. But I hope this stands out as something different. This letter still makes me feel like I may be talking to a wall. Please, prove me wrong. Sincerely, Nick.